Good day, everybody. I'm Shmee, and I make guides for Path of Exile's Ruthless mode. If you're enjoying the content, please hit the like button, and feel free to subscribe if you want to see more. Today, I'm back to show you how to create this Frost Blades Pathfinder. She is an extremely fast farming character who can work wonders speedrunning maps, delves, or heists. With her, you can keep 3 utility flasks up near permanently. Even better is that you can significantly change the function of your build by just changing your flask setup. Early on, she can rely on large boosts to elemental resistances through the bismuth flask, but once you get your resistances capped with your gear, you can swap that out for a different utility flask. I'll have a whole section talking about flasks later. She's not perfect, though. She has 3 significant weaknesses. She's very squishy if you let her flasks fall off. Her single target DPS can be pretty low, and she cannot handle elemental reflect at all. She can speed clear all the normal and magic monsters on a map, but if she runs into a rare with high damage reduction and regenerate life, she usually can't kill it. This is a great character for farming, but she will struggle on very hard targets. With the Frostblades Pathfinder, you'll be wearing leather armor and you'll use, you guessed it, Frostblades as your primary attack skill. If you want to use a second attack for single target damage, your only good options are Glacial Hammer or Frost Crash because this build mostly scales cold damage. Both lock you into a weapon type and require support gems to be worthwhile. Glacial Hammer can be nice for shattering enemies, but in my opinion, just stick with Frostblades. If you want to create a Frostblades Pathfinder, simply start a Ranger, throw away Burning Arrow after you kill Hillock, and replace it with Frostblades. Hopefully Hillock drops you a melee weapon, otherwise don't delete Burning Arrow quite yet. The beauty of Frostblades is that you only need to target one monster, but the skill will automatically target many more. Speed clearing for you just means targeting whatever monster is convenient and letting your skill automatically do the rest. Leveling up your passive tree is relatively simple as well. We have 2 goals, the Assured Strike cluster, but more importantly, this attack mastery, and the Keystone Iron Reflexes. We're going to take the lower path out of the Ranger start. While leveling, you can take the quick step path for the increased movement speed, and then refund it later when you hit the Endgame for the increased damage and critical strike chance from One with Nature. Then, we're going to head down toward Iron Reflexes. You can do this right away all in one go if you feel comfortable, but most likely your damage and health will be far too low to level without constantly dying. Instead, I recommend taking these life and these damage clusters that you open up along the way. You're only going to open up one of these clusters at a time while you path forward, so each time you do, just take a stop and fill out the cluster before you move on. If you do this, you should get Iron Reflexes around the middle of Act 4. Then, push your movement speed by taking the Fleetfoot cluster, and after that, develop all the way up to Art of the Gladiator. Then head back over to the Ranger side, develop up through Aspect of the Lynx until you get Revenge of the Hunted and Forces of Nature. Then finish the build by taking Lethality, Replenishing Remedies, and Natural Remedies. In one of the 2 clusters relating to flasks, take this mastery. Everything we kill is either chilled or frozen, so what this really says is 100% increased flask charges gained. It's unfortunate, but you shouldn't invest into your flasks until the very end of the campaign. You're going to get a bismuth flask, a jade flask, and a quicksilver flask during the campaign, so make sure to keep those. Your flask engine requires a lot to function, though, not only including crafting, but also Einhar crafting and the Master Alchemist Ascendancy. You probably won't get your flask engine rolling until you get into mapping, but once you do, your power level will skyrocket. As you develop into the endgame, you should find a good axe and then take this cluster right here, which boosts your critical strike chance and multiplier with axes. You should also then take the mastery, which gives you access to rage. I picked up a unique mace, so I'm memeing a bit, and the build is definitely suffering for it. You'll struggle with strength no matter what, so you'll have to find a heavy belt until you can get some strength from your gear. Otherwise, developing the endgame is all about filling in the clusters you've already unlocked, and then the last choice is your access to this cluster jewel socket. If you push your Pathfinder deep into the endgame, this is your best choice by a wide margin. For your flask setup, you will always want to have a jade flask and a diamond flask. The third flask can be a bismuth flask right at the start of the endgame to get your resistances capped early, but in the end you're going to want to have either a gold flask for farming, which will give you about 55% increased item rarity, or a sulfur flask, which gives you a big boost to your damage. Even when crafted, the base duration of a quicksilver flask is just too low in Ruthless, so the benefit is sporadic. This leaves you with 2 life flasks, one with bleed immunity, and another with poison immunity. When you're crafting your flasks, remember to use glass blower's baubles first on a normal rarity flask. This means that in 4 baubles, you can get to 20% quality on a flask with your best increase to base duration. If you do this on a flask that is already magic, it will require far more baubles to use. It'll take 10 instead of just 4. Crafting flask modifiers gets a bit complicated. For prefixes, the best stat which you really want is increased charge recovery. This stacks multiplicatively with increased flask charges gained and ensures that your flasks are always on. If you can't get that, either of these 2 modifiers that restore charges will work. And if you can't get that, increased duration will work as well. More charges don't really mean anything to us in this build, and anything that reduces flask duration is actively bad for us. That brings us to the suffixes. Almost everything here reduces the duration. We don't want that. Only this one suffix is good for us, but oh boy is it amazing. In this build, anything that says during a flask effect really means always. So any of these modifiers are just a free big load of stats in this build. In an absolutely perfect world, you would have 4 flasks, 1 diamond flask, 1 jade flask, 1 sulfur flask, and 1 gold flask. They would all have 20% quality and increased charge recovery. And the 4 flasks would have this modifier, 1 giving you increased critical strike chance, 1 giving you attack damage leached as life, 1 giving you increased attack speed, and a gold flask with increased movement speed. You'd use 2 health flasks and 3 utility flasks. If you were pushing hard content, you would substitute in the sulfur or jade flask for your gold flask, and then substitute the gold flask back in when you were farming easier content. Note that the amount of currency required to get a perfect flask setup, or even just the perfect combination of modifiers, would be astronomical. You can burn currency, but for the most part, if you're lucky enough to get a combination of affixes that works, just keep it. You just get what you get until you're rich and have a backup you can craft. You would have the option to go down to 1 healing flask, but that will leave you vulnerable to either bleed and corrupted blood or to poison. If you take this armor and evasion mastery to gain immunity to poison, you could try out 4 simultaneous utility flasks, but I haven't tested it yet, and I don't know if that's a good idea. Now that you have your flasks, it's 20% quality and you've got enchantments that work, head over to Einhar's Menagerie. You'll need 4 rare beasts captured per flask, and you want to craft the use when charges reach full option. This makes it so that as you fight, your flasks are constantly refilling, and if they reach full, they restart. Their effects will only wear off in extremely long fights, and even in that case, you still have the option to manually use them. With your Ascendancies, you'll want to take Nature's Boon, then Master Alchemist, and then Nature's Adrenaline. If and when you get your 4th Ascendancy, you can choose to take Master Surgeon, but you can get this effect with just a Transmute Orb. Instead, my plan is to take these 2 points for the Flask stats instead. It may be unconventional, but I think it's best. With this Frostblade's Pathfinder, you will fly through the campaign and any maps you run. Your character will be a master alchemist, chugging potions until the puny Dr. Jekyll Ranger turns into the frozen blade storm that is Mrs. Hyde. And once you finally get your stupid gold flask to drop and stop feeling so dumb for not looting all the ones that you saw before you thought of making this character, then you... once you've gotten your Pathfinder fully set up, she will shatter through everything at blinding speed while farming the highest quality gear Rayclast has to offer. Thank you for watching, and until next time, take care, Exiles.